Thomas McLaurin is George Floyd's eldest cousin. 10 months after the tragedy, he is still coming to terms with the impact of his cousin's death.
To know that the world is talking about my cousin, it's an unusual feeling, but it makes me proud to know that everybody recognizes that his death is not going to be for nothing.
Floyd's death may have triggered a racial reckoning around the world, but McLaurin believes real change in the United States can only come if the officer charged with his murder, Derek Chauvin, is convicted.
What we're looking for is a speedy trial with a guilty verdict. Because we've seen a constant rhetoric of people dying at the hands of police officers, especially unarmed people, then there needs to be some change as to the way the police and the citizens deal with each other. The motto of the police, from my understanding, is to protect and serve, not to accost and kill.
Minneapolis, New York, Washington, Portland. Throughout the summer of 2020, Americans of all races took to the streets to call for justice and police reform.
Police brutality is terrorism.
Some have decided to take matters into their own hands, setting up militias to protect their own communities, like the Minneapolis Freedom Fighters. This neighborhood in South Minneapolis is where Floyd took his final breath with Chauvin's knee on his neck. The Freedom Fighters are casing out the area to secure it for an upcoming rally.
Each of these exits, we need a spot where we can grab, take, hunker down, right, de-escalate, and then remove.
Jamil Jackson is their commander. This 43-year-old father is a teacher and basketball coach, but when needed, he becomes a security presence meant to replace the police and prevent attacks from hostile groups.
Part of our mission as the Freedom Fighters is to protect from within. And so if our community calls us and asks us to be present for the security of the event, then as long as we're able to, then we will.
The Freedom Fighters have high hopes for this trial. Chauvin is facing 3 charges, including 2 for murder and up to 40 years in prison.
I personally would like to see a conviction. I would like to see some true police reform that changes the dynamics and the paradigm of which our police operate within our streets and our communities. Unfortunately, there are going to be people who win and people who lose on both sides, and right now we're a very tense racial state within our country, and so we're anticipating that one side or another, there are going to be some angry folks that want to demonstrate their anger.
In the state of Minnesota, a white police officer has never been prosecuted, let alone convicted, for the killing of a black man. According to several tallies, African Americans represent about 25% of police-involved deaths in the past 20 years, despite making up barely 8% of the state's population.
You have to understand that the criminal justice system in this country is precisely created to only target people of color.
That's right.
When white people get into it, it is almost, the entire system becomes apathetic.
I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to live under a police state. I don't want to live with a bunch of white men or black men who have license to kill me if they deem that I have violated the law.
For many civil rights activists like Nikema Levi Armstrong, change can only come through an overhaul of the entire system, starting with a real reform of the police.
In Minneapolis and across the state, if we're serious, we're going to critically examine the role of police, not just say, this was one bad apple and maybe 3 more, so nothing else to see here, folks. No, this is a part of systemic racism and white supremacy that has allowed people like Chauvin and these other 3 officers to feel comfortable doing what they do. This institution began on the backs of black people in the aftermath of slavery. It's hard to be optimistic that this institution can be reformed. I think it needs to be completely overhauled.
Both the defense and prosecution have decided to call on dozens of witnesses to convince the carefully selected jury. The trial is expected to last between 2 and 4 weeks before the 12 jurors deliver one of the most highly anticipated verdicts in years.